Okay, hello, my name is Brad, and today I'm going to be playing some chess, hopefully some instructive games, and let's get into it, and maybe I can talk a little bit more as the game is playing. So my interest, I guess, is geared towards the lower rated players, as you can probably tell if you watch YouTube chess streamers already. It's quite a saturated market. And hopefully I can just, maybe provide some insights to those of you who are interested in learning a little bit more and are at a lower level. But before that, I think the first thing we need to do is get a game. And I hope you guys can forgive the mess. As you see in my apartment, I'm currently packing to move. Okay, and it looks like we're being paired with Spock646, opening with e4. So typically, I play either the Caro-Kann or the Sicilian, and let's see how the Sicilian works for me today. So after he plays knight f3, he's going to likely play d4, and then what we would do is have this exchange occurring on the d4 square. But he doesn't opt for that. He opts for this bishop c4, and maybe at a later date he will get this d4 push in, and then we'll see how he plays from there. But let's just continue developing knight to f6, hitting at the e4 pawn. Let's see what he has in response to that. So I began playing chess probably around 2012, maybe 2013. I've never actually formally been trained. I've just kind of read books, picked up books on my own. And just learned by teaching myself, watching other players play. So it looks like we're going maybe into a closed Sicilian where they don't push with d4. Yeah. And we'll just have to keep playing. To be honest, I don't play the Sicilian as my main defense to e4, and probably I am close to already being out of book, although I know one or two more natural moves to be made. So probably what he's going to do is, of course, needs to move the d pawn. He's putting pressure along the e-file already. And so if I go c7 here, his knight might come here to hit my queen, but is that such a bad thing? Because then maybe I can just bring my queen back and eventually can push my pawn, my a7 pawn to a6, hitting his knight. So let's just go ahead with that. Typically, you'd hear people saying that it's a bit negligent not to castle as soon as you can. However, the position isn't being blasted open yet, so maybe it's okay to do this. Yeah, exactly that. So let's just pull the queen back to b8 as we intended. And let's see if that was just a waste of time for white to try and pressure my queen. Yes, so now we can get in a6 with tempo. His knight's going to have to retreat back to c3. So knight's going to have to go back to c3. And I will have gotten this move in for free. And now I can effectively castle. And so what's going on here, as you can see, the rook, the knight, the bishop are all applying pressure to this square here, the e5 square. And I'm trying to, in my own right, defend against that with my knight, my pawn, and my queen. And so I need to find another way to prevent black from getting, or white from getting this pawn push in. And then the question is it such a bad idea if white were to get this pawn push in? So let's say he pushes the pawn here. I can then exchange my pawn for their pawn. And if he takes with the knight, maybe I can just go bishop there. And then I'll be adding another piece to attack that square, and also his bishop is a little loose that is behind it. So maybe I should just continue and try and expand on the queen side, which is very typical of Sicilian defenses. And just continue my development. Now I have my bishop all the way over here on b7 looking at his g2 square. And maybe one day that'll play a factor. So now this is an interesting point because I take here and then he can take with his knight. I can recapture with my knight. When his queen captures, notice now that his queen will be on the square and the bishop will be here on f4, and I can get this pawn push in, forking both the queen and the knight. The queen and the bishop, my apologies. Notice if I push the pawn here now, he could just recapture, hitting at my queen, and then after I recapture the bishop, he could just retreat his bishop to any square he would like to along this diagonal. So the first thing I need to do is take his knight for my knight, or her, and now I can make this pawn fork happen. That does weaken the square here, so you see now he has his knight and bishop and queen on this square, so he effectively controls it because all I have is my knight and bishop. And this pawn is a little bit backwards, so we'll see if there's compensation to be had. Certainly he won't give up his queen, so he'll move his queen somewhere, and then I'll capture with the pawn, and we can play that position. So probably something like queen here or queen here, so that when okay. This might actually be better for me. So let's go back here. If he were to go, let's say, queen d2, I capture, then he captures with the queen, I'm still left with this backwards d-pawn. But now, with the way that events have turned out, I can recapture with the pawn here, and my d-pawn, which is now on the e-file, is not really subject to attack as much because of this pawn here at e4. So I think probably he went about the exchange in a suboptimal manner. And as we can see here, I have my knight and bishop applying pressure to this pawn. So this is a bit of a weakness, and I'd like to try and exploit that. But also, I need to try and develop my rooks, try and get them to some open files. Maybe a rook here and a rook here eventually. Spock has gone into a think tank, trying to find the best possible continuation, which I cannot blame them for. It's important to take your time, especially once you've perhaps made a blunder or a weak move. You don't want to just immediately rush to make your next move. You want to take some time and think about the best piecement of your places. So one thing to consider is I wouldn't mind bringing this rook here. However, I should be very aware that the bishop is now going to be hitting at the f7 square, and that may be a future tactical liability. So let's take a second and think about what are my candidate moves. Well, to be honest, one of my candidate moves is just queen c7 because I want to get these rooks connected. So my idea, whether it's right or wrong, is something to the effect of queen c7 with bringing the rooks out to c and d8 squares. However, if I go queen c7, I do have to reckon with this idea of the knight hopping into this square. So let's say queen c7, potentially knight d5. Then, yeah, I have to either, I definitely have to move my queen because I have a lot of things hit, or I'd have to recapture. So probably I'd have to recapture like that. And then after the pawn capture, we can see that my pawn on e5 is now quite exposed. So maybe that's not the best idea. Or I can do, as I said, moving the f rook out with tempo on the queen. So let's say I do that. If I move this rook out here, he might go here next with that idea of the knight eventually moving there. And then if my knight were to recapture, you can see now that the queen, which would be here, and this bishop here, would both be looking down at this square, the f7 square. So we got to be careful of that possibility as well. So I think I'll go queen c7 as I originally wanted to do, with the idea of maybe leaving this rook guarding the f7 pawn and bringing the a rook over to the d file. So right now I have a piece for a pawn, it seems. And I like my position. I have the two bishops. Two bishops typically will do the best in an open position. Yes. So now he's brought his rook to the open file, which is a very smart idea. He's trying to contest this file. When there's an open file, typically rooks do best on them. So let's see if I can't also contest it as well. And I do see a nifty tactic. If he moves his queen off of this rank, I have this idea of bishop captures here, pawn captures, and then queen captures. Now does that work though? Because he might have this intermezzo of bishop captures pawn, then knight there. But I still think that might work. And somewhat down on time, so let me just think about it for 1 second. Bishop captures a3, knight d5, rook capture, knight captures d5, maybe bishop captures d5. I think that might work, so let's try it, and if it's wrong, if I've calculated poorly, we'll soon find out. Yes, so he perhaps didn't see that, or maybe he just recognized that he was going to lose that pawn if he didn't recapture. But I did give up the bishop pair. However, now you see I've removed one of the defenders of the e4 square. And so now I have 2 minor pieces attacking this pawn. Alright. So why did I move my rook there? Well, because I have some back rank issues currently. And so if he wants to capture my rook, I'll recapture my queen, and then I'll have another piece attacking this pawn, but also my queen will be centralized in a very strong location. So let's go ahead and do that. And so now I need to make some luft for my king so I don't get checkmated. Okay. Interesting move. I don't mind going into an endgame right now. Also, I'm threatening mate here on the g2 square. So he needs to reconcile that. I'm not getting back ranked mated, thankfully. So let's say he captures my queen. What do I want to capture with? Oh, we don't have to come to any final conclusion in that variation, because now my bishop and my queen are eyeing down the g2 square, and this is going to be mate for my opponent. So something you always need to be looking out for in your own play is whether or not there's a mate threat. So let's just go ahead and do that. We can say good game and well played to our opponent. Well, thank you guys for watching my first ever YouTube video. I hope to, in the future, probably improve the way I'm speaking, have more ideas about potential variations, and start going more in depth into the potential outcomes. And otherwise, I hope you guys maybe gain something from this. One of my strong desires would be, if you can see any ways I could even improve, please feel free to let me know in the comments, and I would be glad to also learn from these games. So thank you all, and have a good evening, morning, night, whenever you're watching. Bye-bye.